Jeremy, how about you go first the whole time? That will make it easier.
Okay. My name is Jeremy Kaplowitz. I am 26 years old as of 1 week a few days ago, on the 31st, yesterday. And I'm in New York City.
I didn't know it was your birthday. Happy birthday, Jeremy.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Not yet. A week.
Oh.
You got time.
Oh, okay. You have one more week. Okay. Now they said as of a week ago. So,
yeah, a week from yesterday.
Okay. Okay. I see what you're saying now. Yeah. My name is Matt Fankum. I'm 28 years old. I have been shit on my whole life, and I'm stockpiling weapons, and I'm ready to kill.
Sounds good. And Matt, where are you based
Sorry,
out of?
I just watched Joker.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Matt, where are you based out of?
I live in beautiful
Gotham City, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Arkham. I live in Pacifica, California. It's in the Bay Area. It's about 10 minutes south of San Francisco.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, so, I mean, just like I think probably a good basic place to start is if you could just talk a little bit about how hard drive came to be and also why it came to be.
Yeah, I mean, Matt put together the hard drive team. I think, maybe you can speak more to like the combination of punk and video games than I can, but basically about 2 years ago, Matt came to me and a few other editors after we failed to put together a satire of the alt-right and asked if we wanted to try something that would be a little more popular.
A little more palatable. Yeah. Jeremy was one of the top contributors at the website, and he had built up a couple of his own audiences. He built up Lizard People of New York, and I put him in charge of a project that we kind of created and brainstormed together with another editor named Mike called Truth Bang, but it was too insane for anyone to post on their own social media platforms. So we put a lot of energy and effort into it, and we just could not get a single person to read it. But I knew that it wasn't a problem with our team. It was a problem with our target audience and the material that we were putting out. So I kept the team together. I added some other people who I liked, like Mark Roebuck. And I said, Jeremy, I've always had this idea to turn Hard Times into having its own video game section. And he was into it, and he led the project. And now here we are running for the presidency of the United States of America.
It's never too early to announce, for that. So, I mean, it's like one of those things, like, you can go to a website, you can read a person's tweets, but it's never really clear, like, unless you just ask a person, like what underpins Hard Drive's comedy? Like, what is its purpose? Like, are you making fun of something? Are you celebrating something? Is it a mix of that? Like where are you guys coming from with it?
Yeah, I think I would say it's a mix, but I think when we started out, we definitely wanted to celebrate video games and nerd culture more than we wanted to make fun of it, because a lot of things like calling someone a gamer isn't really that could be an insult to most people, as being like, that guy looks like a fucking gamer. So we knew it was like a big thing that doesn't always suck, even though like a vocal minority is pretty awful. We wanted to make video game jokes that cater to that audience, while being like clearly showing that we're fans of it. But we're also smart about it, and we try to make fun of the things that is toxic in that community. So it's a little bit of like, we are celebrating it, and we come from a place of fandom, but also we're self-aware about it, and we know the more negative aspects of it, and we try to satirize that too. But it always comes from a place of comedy. We're always just trying to make funny jokes.
Yeah. In order to criticize something super properly, you have to love it first.
Yeah.
And I've loved video games since I was a little kid. Punk and video games are like the two big constants in my life, and I couldn't be happier to be helping run a site of punk comedy and video game comedy. But when you make fun of people who are glued to their monitors, I have like 3,000 hours in PUBG, so we're making fun of ourselves.
Well, what lessons did you learn from poking fun at like sacred cows on Hard Times that you tried to put into practice with this site? Like that's what I'm wondering is, Like, are punks more touchy, more likely to get dramatic than gamers?
Oh, I think no. I think gamers are more dramatic. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think that gamers probably.
Both communities have those touchy people.
Right.
I think with Hard Drive, Jeremy and his crew did a better job of shunning the extremely touchy people early on and letting them know that we weren't going to cater to their whims. So I don't think we deal with as much of it. You think that's right, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely came out of the gate like we're not one of the shitty video game jokes, because there's just so many awful video game websites out there and video game quote-unquote comedians that are really awful.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's I know that's a subjective thing. Like, what is the difference to you between like what makes for like a shitty comedy game focused site versus like a more successful one? Because I know there's definitely
we don't care about historical accuracy.
Yeah, exactly. That is true. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of like Twitch streamers and there's the whole like Gamergate movement and all this stuff, and there's a lot of comedy and content that caters to that. And we, even though they do like our non-political jokes, we try to never cater to that audience.
Interesting. I mean, so that's less like staying away from sacred cows again, and more like it's just not interesting to you guys.
I mean, yeah, I think the Hard Times and Hard Drive both are like, we don't really care that much about pissing people off, and we're fans of the things that we're making fun of, so we feel that comfortable making fun of what people like, because like at the end of the day we just don't care that much. Like if someone gets pissed off, like if we run an article that's like and we really stand behind it, and we're like, maybe we're making fun of like Ninja, maybe Ninja did something stupid and we made fun of Ninja, like if we lose some Ninja fans, like we don't care that much, because like we can stand behind the joke we made.
I think that, there was the funny stuff. Yeah, I would also say that we can go after sacred cows. Pretty consistently. And we do piss people off. It's just not our objective. Objective is to be funny, good observations, and to question widely held beliefs within our community, which we see some faults in. But some people just go like, I'm a jokester, so all they do is look for a reaction and a right. That's not what it is. You know what? There's some people in the gaming community where it's so easy to provoke them, but you don't got to do anything. All you got to do is bring up any sort of like franchise that they want. I'll just attack them in the comments instead of attacking thing on, or covering the big issue, which is the fact that they reduced the size of the food, or whatever.
Yeah. I think Hard Times and Hard Drive have both done a pretty good job of proving that, like, of gaining credibility as legitimate fans of music and video games, so that when we do make fun of stuff, like, people don't generally like think that we're making fun of it. We're making fun, like, kind of with it.
Well, it's weird because, like, I think of it not necessarily as a binary. I guess it's like two ends of a spectrum where, you talk about the word gamer, and like there's a lot of stuff's just like tied up in that word and that kind of personality that it brings to mind. Of a person who loves video games so much that they actually like hate most of it, or they hate most of them. Like they're actually more ruled by hate than love. But like it's interesting as an intersection on this too, especially if you just saw Joker, is like, I don't know, like I don't know what your sense is of this. Like I don't know, like I grew up with games, as I'm sure you did, and I don't really know how I can explain to people like how the field in space has this tendency to be so self-serious and also frequently very humorless when it's gathered around like, playing Mario or just goofing off on the internet. I don't know why there's that really bent streak of just not being able to take a joke like about much of anything.
Yeah. I don't know if I think you're right. I don't know if I have a response.
Well, I don't know. It's just like, how do you, like, where's your sense of, like, where that has come from, that's become so crystallized? Like, if you sense it, too, like where's that coming from?
If we're getting philosophical about it,
yeah.
I believe that oftentimes people are unable to take a joke about things when they do not have much going on in their life other than that one thing. So it becomes hyper important to them. So, for example, if you only play Smash and you don't have a balanced life outside of that, then maybe jokes about that game become less funny. And because it's more important that you are the most knowledgeable on the subject, and it's more important that you are not a joke. If you're someone who plays Smash even competitively, but also has, like, you know, a partner or some friends or some other hobbies or something like that, maybe it's a little easier to take the joke. I just found in my personal life that the people who are most self-serious are usually just insecure. So
yeah, I think that's probably true.
I think that's just true of people in general. Like, because I always hear people talk about video games as if it's some sort of like alternate planet, as if it's not comprised of like human beings. You know, like it's like some other species, some other something. You don't think there's some sort of exception here with that kind of behavior, then?
I think the people who talk about that, I think Jeremy has done an amazing. He's pulled off this huge narrative arc about that word and how people relate to it and how they identify with it. And he started throwing out some tweets early on that were like, you know, being a gamer is the most oppressed minority. And then he did a video where he went to Comic-Con and talked about gamers' rights, the whole gamers rise up thing. And then he even did, you know, there should be a gamer president, which then steamrolled into this huge Ace Watkins campaign where we've got like 170,000 people now who are supporting this man on Twitter who's a gamer for president. So I do think there's a lot of fertile ground for satirization of the word gamer and people identifying with that and being self-serious about it.
Yeah. It's a weird thing where, like, video games are such a new medium that most people who play it are pretty young and it's not that popular. And then, like, it's like this thing where it's, like, kind of solitary. It wasn't that popular. You had to already understand technology to a pretty, like, big extent to be able to do it in, like, the early 90s or whatever, or the 80s. And then, like, now video games and nerd culture are so popular with, like, this weird thing where a huge percentage of the population thinks that they're a minority class,
right?
And it's really, really bizarre.
I mean, I think I've heard the phrase Comic-Con industrial complex, and I think video games are part of that. It is true where it's like they're a huge minority, which is like we're already like now we're ranging people by like what they do with their leisure time. I don't know, just there are all these contradictions and just like weird things, and you think about it, and it's like, you know, I'm not going to say like, oh, it's just games, but it's also like, it's not really worth going to war over or getting as up in arms as many people.
But when you build your whole personality around liking comic books, and then a few years later, the most popular movies in the world are comic book movies, you still have this image of yourself as like, this is my thing, and then you become... I don't know, somebody who harasses writers online. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's a lot like being a music fan, where you get irritated. Where, you know, I liked them before you knew who they were.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the funny part is now there's like 90% of the U.S. population considers themselves underdogs, even though they represent pop culture. And video games is bigger than like movies and music combined, as far as like ad spend is concerned and all that sort of stuff. You know, the world is ruled by these. Look at the Mark Zuckerberg testimony the other day. It's like the world is ruled by these people, but they still see themselves as, underdogs or, like a minority, social minority.
I mean, is that? I don't know. I want to ask you to speculate why. I mean, I guess like what we're talking about is there's a lot of contradictions here that are pretty widely known, even if they're not all that self-aware. So what do you guys get most excited to satirize about that, all those dynamics and the echo chambers and the cluelessness and yet also the pervasiveness? Like, what do you get most excited to either to mock or to sort of try to make a point about?
I don't know. I mean, I do like doing the sort of like more cutting stuff. The more like we're talking a lot about like. More not political, but like things that are making fun of gaming. But if you look at our articles, it's probably 9 out of 10 just like normal, like Mario's goofy, isn't he?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I really like, I think for hard drives, real quick, I'll say, if I had to pick like a favorite thing, I really like doing topical stuff. I like being, when there's a new video game announcement, I like having hard drives with a funny joke 30 minutes later.
Yeah, I think hard drive is really good at that. I think one of the things that I enjoy most about hard drive is there becomes these niche groups that like hyperventilate together about something on the internet, like over forums or subreddits, and they just get all spun out of control. Like just it's like these intense echo chambers where they all have this insane belief about some game or something, and then to just make a joke that just completely bursts that bubble can be really fun. A joke that I think I wrote, I don't remember, was something about like a guy spends $3,000 to turn up whatever anti-analyzing is, and it's because I was building computers, and I'm on these forums, and guys are like, oh, you got to get this, you got to get, like, what are you doing? You're never going to be able to be happy unless you got this, and they're all just like egging each other on. And then I kind of sat back for a second, and I was like, wait a second, I don't even know what some of these things are, but I'm just going to crank them up. So I think whenever you get like that intense online subreddit niche group, there's always some fun beliefs that pop up throughout them, which can be fun. You can just kind of like turn them upside down, and they turn into funny jokes somehow.
Yeah, I remember that one was very successful, and I specifically remember it because I think in the meeting I was like, that article is not going to do well because everyone knows what anti-aliasing is, and everyone else was like, no, they don't, and then it killed.
Yeah, I think some people were yelling at us, being like, I know what that is.
I mean, I'm curious. I've seen about musicians really love hard times, but I don't have a sense of I don't know. I know that hard drive has a lot of traffic, but I don't know if how much of it's coming from video game industry, how much of it's coming from influencers, stuff like that. Do you hear anything like that? Any kind of reaction? Has anyone reached out to you with any kind of opinion?
We've heard that. Yeah, we've heard video game industry people like us a lot. I don't, I can't tell you the specific number offhand, but I feel like every time we meet someone, they're always like, "Oh yeah, we all love hard drive. Everyone in the Slack shared, this article or whatever." I think that's we get shared in a lot of Slack. But.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think mostly it's just video game fans. I have to imagine, just because they outnumber industry.
Yeah,
it does seem like a groundswell, like a grassroots thing. I've always been a little surprised how we haven't gotten more traction from popular Twitch streamers. I always wonder about that a little bit. Maybe we don't do that many jokes about Twitch culture. I feel like gaming is a very large space, and there's different places within it. But I am a little curious why some of the Twitch streamers that I watch all the time, seems like some of them aren't even aware of us, which is kind of interesting.
True. Our biggest platform is Twitter, so I think the most, out of any of the people in the quote-unquote industry, we probably get writers for websites because that's where they live, is Twitter.
Mm. That makes sense. I mean, so we've talked a little bit about sacred cows and stuff, and I think we've talked about how synonymous, I don't know, I guess backlash can be. I mean, I feel like every day, maybe even every minute, I hear the word controversy, backlash. Those words to me are starting to lose all meaning. But hopefully, I trust you know what I mean when I ask. Have you ever gotten a kind of backlash? I've seen things about backlashes with jokes you've made in the hard times, but I haven't heard anything like that about hard drive.
We haven't gotten too much backlash. We are always right, I think, is what we've tried to be. It's just correct and funny all the time.
Are you ever hoping? Are you ever hoping for a backlash, or?
No, I'm just joking. I'm trying to think of times that we've gotten back. We never hope for backlash. We definitely don't write thinking oh, I hope we can't run this because people will be upset.
Right.
But generally, people, I think, trust us to be good, have a good take on things, and they don't, we mostly get the benefit of the doubt. I'm trying to think of, we definitely had one article that people were upset about. I'm trying to look it up. It was when Blizzard laid off.
Oh, what about the one about the game developer who died?
Did we do one about a game developer who died?
We did one about Rockstar's employee's grave or something like that. Like,
we did an Everest one that had a picture of someone who was dead.
That was ridiculous.
That was really silly.
Wasn't there one about like Red Dead Redemption 2 gravestones, just list name of developers who worked on the game?
Oh yeah. Someone got mad about that,
and then someone actually had died, and they thought that we had. They thought that we had like looked into their friends and were mocking them or something. We were just talking about overworking your employees.
How would they
coming to someone's funeral and spitting on their grave?
The headline, I'm looking at it now, was every Red Dead Redemption 2 tombstone to feature names of real developers who died during production. In video game development, there's a huge issue right now with like unionizing and developers being overworked. And we always try to like make fun of that with like a smart take about like, we try to be like pro labor whenever we can. And every now and then, people do get mad at that stuff. The other one I was thinking of was also a labor one where it was Blizzard gives employees box with 8.3% chance of containing pink slip. And, a lot of people were like, these people lost their jobs. Like, how can you making fun of them? And we're like, we're making fun of whatever. Who cares?
Well, so here's the thing. The game, I think the hard drive should turn that controversy. There is no guy in the room. The hard drive guy is not no one to report to as far as getting in trouble. You know what I mean? They're very responsible because I would let them run anything they want.
I mean, I'm no stranger to that topic. Like a lot of interviews I've done for this project or with people talking about labor issues, and I'm familiar with that specific thing with Red Dead 2. I'm surprised someone would think you'd run the joke would be somebody died rather than the exploitation. I think that that could be an example of like the way that people intentionally misread things online because they want to be angry. But I do wonder about that too with like self-awareness and people who are passionate about games is like, I just spent like the last year or so before I got in touch with you guys writing a book, and some of that labor stuff does enter into it. But like I was struck by how many times it comes up by people who quit the industry or no longer in it, where it's like, they talk about people being super passionate fans of the industry, but you never hear about like people who are like, players who are like militant and vocal. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's like a Bernie bro or something who fights for unions, but then also just will like play Fortnite on Twitch, or they're just gonna like play things nonstop, not think about what their actions are doing or what they're supporting. I don't think human suffering really enters into a person's head when they're thinking about wanting to fire up Red Dead 2. Like I don't think I read about any boycotts after those conditions had been leaked, and I don't really know that I have a profound question to that. It's just like...
I have an answer for you.
Go ahead.
You just have to vote Ace Watkins to be the first gamer president of the United States.
I guess I walked right in. Does he care about issues that matter to gamers?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I think the world is filled with selfish, hypocritical, naive people. That's what we all are. So the stuff that you're describing is just people being people.
For sure.
We all do it.
Well, but I think when you're running a satire website, so like for my site, all I need to do is just listen to people talk about it and put it out there. But if you're trying to like satirize it or make some point, and like the challenge is like not to just lapse into like, haha, everything's crazy, and we wrote something that's like 2% sillier than real life. Like how do you think about or discuss like spinning some of the space's heavier problems, like not just labor but other stuff?
I mean, we always try to have we try to think about like how people can read our jokes and something that the Hard Times does a lot that we've kind of taken from is that we always have to think about what the target of the joke is and what the subtext is, and as long as it's something that we can stand behind, that we think is funny and not, not even punching down, but just like, as long as the subtext is something that we can stand behind, we usually run it.
Yeah, so, we were lucky with Hard Drive, where we were starting off with a system and knowledge base of about 3 years worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And Hard Times had made lots of mistakes. And when Hard Drive started, we were able to take some of the lessons that we learned to improve the systems we were using. And then Hard Drive grabbed that ball and then continued to improve those processes. And I think we've gotten to the point where our group of people and our process ends up spitting out headlines that are well targeted and with solid formulas. So we have the satirical toolkit to do what we need to do. Not to say we won't misfire sometimes, but for every one headline you see, if you include the open submissions, there's 2,000 pitched. So, you're seeing the best of what we've come up with, and I think we've been doing it long enough where we're able to see things happening in the news in our areas, in our space, and the Hard Drive team is particularly good at this, and having a discussion about who's in the right and who's in the wrong, and coming up with an angle and coming up with a headline. One of the things that I do like about satire in general is sometimes you don't need to have a discussion about what your angle is going to be, because if you can craft an extremely strong satirical headline, that could be the proof, right? So you can argue with your comedy a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I mentioned before, I'm kind of the inverse of you guys, coming from The Onion to covering games in a less funny way. But like, just hearing you talk about that, like what it kind of reminded me of is I know a lot of very hyper cynical, hyper burnt out writers who covered the space, and I think I've talked to a number of developers too who tell me feels like video game culture is kind of like code for like the same conversations over and over and over and over and over and over, and it's and they're not sure why it is like the needle never seems to move, why like conversations don't seem to progress past like being basically the same, the arguments being basically the same. So I wonder, like,
because you're talking to 14-year-old boys.
No, I mean
that's the audience of gamers.
This runs the gamut. I mean, developers in their 50s down to like writers in their early 30s. So like, there's a wider range and an older range. But that's what I was curious about. Like, is that your sense of it? Does it seem like it's that bolted in place and that repetitive? Like, because I'm just wondering with that, as far as like making fun.
Oh, you know what? I think Jeremy wrote a headline about this, didn't you? Isn't that repeated topic that you have to always talk about? Isn't that? Oh, sure. You wrote that headline.
We leaked a quote unquote template for a like a controversy. Let me find it.
Sure.
I'm Googling disgusting, and then it's like disgusting : and then like insert nerd property fans are boycotting because it features some insert marginalized people template, and it's like don't release this. This is just a template, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And that's kind of us pointing at the same thing that you said that your writers were experiencing, which is just that the same conversations have to happen over and over and over again.
And it's fresh every time.
I mean, I wonder. Go ahead.
I do think that games are moving so quickly, and that there's so many releases and so many controversies. I know a lot of them are of a similar nature, but they're all unique enough to make jokes about, where I don't think it gets very tiring as far as like our actual approach to it. You know what I mean? Like I think Hard Drive keeps it super fresh with their timely takes. So it's like, I don't know, Jeremy, are you guys going to do like a Fallout 76 take? Was there one of those, or?
I don't know if we have a Fallout one. We actually have an old Fallout article that's kind of relevant. But there's always like, it's always something new. There's always something you can.
There's always something. And so I see stuff happen in the gaming world, and I kind of sit back and go, I wonder what they're going to do about it. And I think a lot of people have started to think about that, and that's pretty exciting.
It reminds me of, I think, like a lot of these satire websites, whether it's the Hard Times or the Onion or Reductress or whatever. It reminds me a lot of like the golden era of like the Daily Show.
Yeah.
People are like, well, how is Jon Stewart going to keep doing a show every single day? Like, it's just about politics. And it's like, well, there's always something new and ridiculous, and they're always going to have like an interesting take on.
Yeah, that's true. To kind of shift gears, I was curious, Matt, because like I know you had a zine. I am just curious what you feel is different about like the collaborative spirit of like punk scene DIY zines versus publishing for the internet. Like, I'm just curious if it feels similar, if it feels totally different, because a lot of people.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
You know, our magazine runs different than I think any other magazine on the planet. It's a very, very weirdly democratic and collaborative, and there's a lot of passion put into it by so many people that it does kind of have that zine vibe to it. And so I still do get that thrill of like the DIY community aspect. We have to balance that now with the notion of having a couple salaries and having a bunch of freelancers who we pay and the actual needs of a business. I didn't really start Hard Times ever thinking about making money.
Yeah.
But I was lucky that so many of the projects that we've started have become so popular that they could make money. So there's still a very DIY collaborative aspect to it, but I'm trying to get a little bit more professionalized in some senses and find out where there's opportunities to monetize the audiences so that I can take more of the people who I enjoy and have them actually do this full time as opposed to burning the candle at both ends. Because I used to burn the candle at both ends, and it's very tiring. You can only do it for so long.
Yeah.
So I want to have our platform be the sort of thing that can launch more people's comedy careers. So yeah, you know, it started like that, and it still has those aspects to it. But I think one of my main focuses in my life right now is to make it a little bit more than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I was just wondering. I mean, like coming from those traditions and like making a zine. I'm just curious because, like, I have always heard the video game. I think I've always sensed it. Like, I've talked to a lot of people hyper into video games, not really into punk. Maybe don't know much about punk, which is fine. But I've heard a lot of them talk about ways they feel video games are punk, and it's just kind of interesting to hear what they have to say about it. And it doesn't really feel like it holds together, but I get what they're trying to say.
Well, there is a combined aspect, which is when you're in high school and you're a punk kid, you don't fit in, right? And so you don't want to go to the high school football game. Right. You're not on the team, of course, but you also don't want to go and be in the stands. And so you could go to band practice, but after band practice, you guys might go and play Halo, right? I've always found a lot of similarities. Most of my punk friends also are into gaming. I actually know a lot of punk bands now. My friends who continued being successful musicians and tour the world, they have gaming PCs with them, and they game before every show. So I do think that there's some similarities, but at the same time, gaming is so popular. It's like that similarity. You could probably find it with any community. Like if I was a surfer, I could probably be like, you know what, man, surfing's all about gaming.
Yeah, gaming's becoming so popular. You could be like, yeah, dude, punk and movies.
Exactly. So it's like, I do think that there is some weirdo outcast aspect to both of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But gaming has obviously become so popular that it's pop culture too. But here's one thing that would kind of prove the point that there's some connection. I thought for sure when we launched Hard Drive, the Hard Times people would reject it, and that we'd have two diverse sets of people. And we got like a 99% approval rating from Hard Times readers, even when we threw Hard Drive content right at them. Like we're talking about, these guys went from jokes about the Josh Front to joke about Pikachu, and they didn't even complain.
Well, why did you think Why did you think they were gonna reject it or not like it? Just because it was different?
Because you're talking about people who are you're talking about people who are 45-year-old tattooed neck to fucking toes skinheads reading Hard Times, right? At least some of them. And then you want to talk about World of Warcraft. And I thought there would be too much of a difference, but our fans really accepted both. I mean, there's some people who only like one or the other, but there's a really big crossover. And the first day we launched Hard Drive, or within the first week, I think 30,000 people had liked it on Facebook, and they were all just from Hard Times. We just post on Hard Times, hey, we got a new thing, and just 30,000 people went right over. So, so I think there's a connection there.
What about the inverse? Do you sense there's a lot of people trickling from Hard Drive over to Hard Times?
No, gamers are nerds. They never understand it. They don't know hardcore.
Are you joking or are you serious?
I mean, I don't think there's as much of it. I don't think it floats over both ways exactly. I mean, there's a lot of people who are just, I don't think you have to have a DIY punk and hardcore. That's an actual community you have to have like a connection to. You have to be like invited to a show and stuff. There's just less of those people out there. I do think that Hard Times has expanded its music content to the point where, and its political and social content to the point where you could be a fan of Hard Drive and go and like some Hard Times stuff. But you'll notice a lot of Hard Time stuff doesn't get pushed out onto the Hard Drive channel because I don't really believe that that's really what they're looking for. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Hard Drive is the son of Hard Times, right? So the father has to provide for the son, but not the other way around.
Who's the mother in this situation?
Hardstyle?
Bill Conway.
So.
No.
Hardstyle. Something else I was wondering, I don't know if you guys have heard this. I mean, I have a couple friends who say, like, and I get it. I mean, they just feel like, oh, well, doesn't the internet kind of parody itself at this point? Like, isn't it true of video games stuff too? Like, why do we need another site making fun of it? Like, have you guys encountered that? I guess it's just an opinion. Have you encountered that sort of attitude?
They should look at the other fucking options they have out there. Ours is the best. Most people should shut up.
Yeah. I think that The Onion probably paved the way for all other satire sites to never have to really deal with that question. Because, like, you could say for the last, billion years that isn't the news funny enough? And no, not really. People can still make jokes about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my head to ask you. Because I know there's, like, a question I want to end on, but we jumped around a ton. Was there something you guys wanted to bring up, but I didn't give you a chance to? Hard
Drive, #1 video game satire site on the planet. Onion tried to copy it, and they couldn't it.
That's true.
They had more resources, more time. They had office space. They had decades of audience and bigger audience, and they couldn't beat us. So, Hard Drive rules.
Yeah. My one thing I'll say that I think is related to your other questions is, we always try not to appeal to the Gamergators and the Kotakus in action. But, which
is really hard because we all are Gamergators, you know what I mean? So it's really hard. What I feel is that even though we do make fun of them all the time, we also just have a bunch of articles that are just about how Waluigi's a goofy character, and they all really like and share those articles, and I don't like when they do. So stop liking your articles if you're bad. That's my only message.
All right, well, this last question is just something I ask of everyone. It's a little, maybe probably the most philosophical and the one least with an answer, but feel free to just hit me with whatever comes to your mind. What do you guys think video games have accomplished?
A lot of bad and a lot of good.
Moments,
yeah. Some good stuff, some bad stuff. I think hopefully that question will become more and more nonsensical as, video games stop being, this interesting niche thing and just become a part of pop culture in the way that, you'd maybe say, what have books accomplished? And you'd be like, I don't know, everything and nothing. And, I don't know, they're books. It's a type of media. So I don't know what they've accomplished as a whole, but one thing that they've accomplished for me that I really like is they've provided a way for me to stay in touch and socialize and feel like I'm hanging out with some of my oldest friends. And I also feel like there is a general barrier for men to sit down and talk to each other and catch up. We don't call each other on the phone very often and just say, hey, tell me about your girlfriend. How's your life going? And if you put a video game in between yourselves and you all squad up and you're in the army now and trying to get to the final circle,
you could talk on the phone with your friends via Discord for 6 hours. And I think that has accomplished, for me, a lot of good social interaction stuff and staying in touch with friends. So I really do care about those who have moved away. And this allows me to feel like I'm hanging out with them virtually and getting updates on their life.
Yeah, I think that's true. I've met a lot of people through video games that I would not have met otherwise. And through the Hard Times. Yeah. I went to a Hard Times writer's wedding the other day, or a few months ago.
Oh, which one?
Jeremy Hammond.
Oh, nice.
People, we all meet through the internet subcultures nowadays. And that's punk and that's video games too.